All right, folks, big tech's at it again, protecting you, the general public, because you're not smart enough to make decisions on your own. Facebook says it plans to remove posts with false vaccine claims, according to the New York Times. Now, this is always really interesting and of particular interest of mine because when you look at these fact checkers, who's the one fact checking them? A lot of times I'll read the fact checks just out of curiosity and pure entertainment to see what they have to say. And I always find that the fact check really doesn't give you proper information. In many cases, they're just mincing words and kind of changing around thought patterns around the topic, but they're not actually saying that it's wrong because they're proving it wrong. They're just saying, I hold the trump card, so therefore I'm smarter than you, and it's wrong, okay? Which obviously is ridiculous. Now, when we look at this article here, we see people protesting COVID-19 vaccine uses risky new mRNA technology. That is not wrong, okay? COVID-19 vaccine makers are exempt from liability. Once again, that is not wrong, okay? Many people don't know this, but in the late 80s, what was happening is that the vaccine makers were actually producing vaccines and they were hurting so many people that they were just continually losing money. So every time they produced a vaccine, I think they were losing, I don't know the exact number, but they were losing X many dollars for every vaccine they produced because so many people were being harmed by them. So they went to the federal government and they said, look, if you want us to produce vaccines anymore, you're going to have to protect us. The federal government, they looked at the situation and said, well, here's the thing is that if some pandemic or virus just came sweeping across the country and we needed a vaccine, we want them to be there for us. And so what the government did is they basically put a law in place that protected the vaccine companies from being charged with any type of fine or being basically accountable for people that they hurt. Okay, so if you get a vaccine, understand this, you are responsible for your health. And if you get a vaccine and you get an autoimmune condition, you get a neurological disease, that is your problem. That is nobody else's problem. And you're stuck dealing with it. You can't go sue the company and say, hey, you ruined my life. You are stuck with it. So it's very important to understand. You can watch all of the news you want. You can read all the fact checks. You can, look at big tech and thank them for basically making sure that they give you the information that they want you to know. However, at the end of the day, none of that matters because the only thing that matters is your health and you're responsible for it. So if you think that you should get the vaccine and it's the best thing on the planet, well, you know what? Then go for it. If you think that it is questionable, then it's best to read on a little bit about it. Now, Facebook said Monday that it plans to remove posts with erroneous claims about vaccines from across its platform, including taking down assertions that vaccines cause autism or that it is safer for people to contract the coronavirus than to receive the vaccination. Now, this is where, just this little statement right here, this is where obviously we can, take a prime fact check example right here, okay? Because somebody might say it's safer to get the coronavirus, right? And then the fact check will be like, that's completely false. The vaccine is going to save your life, right? Well, there's no scientist, there's no doctor, there's no big tech company that could possibly know the answer to this, okay? And the reason for that is because look how many people have gotten coronavirus. Look at the numbers who have survived versus numbers who have died versus people who have had adverse effects that are lasting or long lasting. And look at the amount of people who have gotten the vaccine. And basically, not too many people got the vaccine. A lot of people got the coronavirus. The other thing that we can't even possibly know about this is what time will do to us, okay? So for instance, if you get the coronavirus, 2 years down the road, does your liver start to fail because you got the coronavirus? I mean, probably not, but certainly something we could just throw out there as a possibility in the land of theories, right? When you get the vaccine, is it possible that in 6 months you could have some sort of adverse reaction in your body? Could you have autoimmunity problems, neurological problems, all of these issues? Well, it's definitely in the realm of possibilities. In fact, this vaccine was rushed, okay? They did it in like a year. It typically takes about 3 to 7 years to create a vaccine. So trust me, there is a lot of unknown about this, okay? We're going to have to wait 6 months, 2 years, whatever the time is to determine what the outcome of this will be. But make no mistake, it's definitely in the realm of very serious possibilities. The social network has increasingly changed its content policies over the past year as the coronavirus has surged. In October, the social network prohibited people and companies from purchasing advertising. I think they have the right to do that if they want to. If they don't want to take money from people because they don't like their opinion, whatever. In the past, Facebook had said it would only downrank or push lower down in people's news feeds misleading or false claims about the vaccines, okay? Once again, who's to determine what those false claims are? Because I'm going to give you a very good example of what was considered a false claim the other day that I came across, and it's actually quite alarming, making it more difficult to find such groups or posts. And the other thing, too, that we have to look at is who's to determine what is considered false information and what is considered not. Who's to consider just general information that shouldn't be seen or should be seen, right? Now posts, pages, and groups containing such falsehoods will be removed from the platform entirely. Facebook goes on to say building trust and confidence in these vaccines is critical. Why is this so critical, Facebook? I'm trying to figure that out. Why are you cheerleading this? Because this could very well be a disaster. So we're launching the largest worldwide campaign to help public health organizations share accurate information about COVID-19 vaccines and encourage people to get the vaccines as vaccines become available to them. So how is it? See, this is where this stance is so ridiculous, because you're looking at it going, well, we are going to encourage people to get the vaccines, and the vaccine is so wonderful. But anything that says vaccines are bad is bad. Okay, well, you can't say that. So if you're going to be the police of honesty and integrity and the police of truth and fact, you can't say that. That's absolutely false, because we just talked about how there's an enormous possibility that people will have horrifying side effects. It's definitely in the realm of possibility. All right, now let's go to the article. So the other day, this was posted by the Defender, and it was actually hidden on Instagram. Now, when I say Instagram, that's kind of like AKA Facebook. Their own Instagram is owned by Facebook. It's basically the same company. So it was hidden, it was covered up, and it basically said, this post contains inaccurate information. I read the post, and then I read the actual fact check on it, okay? So this post was 501 deaths, 10,748 other injuries reported following the COVID vaccine, latest CDC data shows. Now, I saw that, I go, geez, that's pretty crazy. And then I saw that it was hidden. You know, I had to unblock it like I was some child, and I wasn't, old enough. I wasn't of age to be able to read this on my own and determine what to make of it. And when I read the fact check, because I was interested to see, what are they fact checking this for? It's from the CDC, for crying out loud. And here's what they had said. Basically, that there was not proof that the vaccine actually killed the person, okay? Now, this is so ridiculous to me, because I'm a pretty avid reader when it comes to this stuff, and I see what they're doing and how they're manipulating data and how they're trying to basically manipulate the way that you think about this kind of stuff. So, for instance, if somebody was to get hit by a car, rushed to the hospital, in the ER, they ended up, dying because they got just roasted by this car, and then they test them for COVID-19, the person, according to the guidelines that are set in place right now by the CDC, they would have died from COVID-19, okay? So they're willing to take pretty much any death, end-stage cancer death, heart failure, heart attack. If they have COVID-19, they're willing to take that death and claim that it's a COVID-19 death, right? Which is a major flip. If you haven't seen the video I did on that, that's a very important one to watch, as we're all being bamboozled on this whole thing. They're willing to do that, but if somebody gets the vaccine and dies from it, they're not willing to just go, "Oh, the vaccine killed them." They go, "No, it wasn't the vaccine. Here's what actually happened. The person had a blood clot, and then they had an anaphylactic reaction." Okay, it wasn't the vaccine. And then they go and they describe the symptoms. So that's what the fact checker did. They go and they describe the symptoms that came from the vaccine and said it wasn't the vaccine. It was this. So for instance, it's like, let's say that you got hit by a car and then they go, and you died from it. And they said, well, no, he didn't die because he got hit by a car. He died because, he had a heart attack. Well, okay, but he got hit by the car, And so you see the point I'm trying to make here. Let's jump into this article real quick. As of January 29th, 501 deaths, a subset of 11,249 total adverse events, had been reported to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention Vaccines Adverse Events Reporting System following the COVID-19 vaccination. The numbers reflect reports filed between December 14th, 2020 and January 29th, 2021. Okay, so this is a really interesting article here. Basically, we're going to scroll down here. As of January 29th, about 35 million people in the U.S. had received one or both doses of the COVID vaccine. So far, only the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines have been granted emergency use authorization in the U.S. by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. By the FDA's, pay attention to this, by the FDA's own definition, the vaccines are still considered experimental until fully licensed, okay? I want you to pay attention to that because there was somebody who wanted to discuss this with me the other day, and I'm using the word discuss very lightly. It was more of an argument, but they wanted to argue that the vaccines aren't experimental. These vaccines are so experimental that you and the general public, or whoever is getting them, I should say, are basically taking part in the largest human health experiment in recorded history. Under no doubt is that what is happening, okay? According to the latest data, 453 of the 501 reported deaths were in the U.S. 53% of those who died were male, 43% were female, and the remaining reported deaths did not include a gender. The average age of those who died was 77, the youngest was 23. Pfizer vaccine made up for 59% of those who died. The Moderna was 41. There was also 690 reports of anaphylactic reactions to the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. The Pfizer vaccine accounted for 76% of the reactions and Moderna of 24. Okay, now this is something that is definitely an interesting topic, because when you look at just in general people getting the vaccine, I mean, they should look at people's genetics and determine whether or not the vaccine is safe for them, because this is something that gets a little bit crazy, because we have this idea that every person on the planet should be able to use the vaccine. However, we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that every person on the planet is going to can react differently. So for instance, let's just take food, for example. You can take somebody, and let's use dairy. You can take somebody who eats dairy and it's got good fats in them for them. It's got good protein for them. Let's say they're eating cheese, right? It's got some enzymes. It's got some probiotic benefits. There's lots of benefits. You have another person eat dairy and they have an enormous negative reaction to it, okay? That's just a generalized example of one person reacting differently than the next. So if we were to use genetics as a good way to look at whether or not somebody could have an adverse reaction, that'd probably be one of the most intelligent ways to basically approaching this. I do a lot of nutrigenomic type of work, and basically we look at people's genetics to determine what kind of food they shouldn't eat, what kind of lifestyle they should live, what are they prone to in the way of disease, what can they do to prevent disease based off of their genetics that they're that's basically, saying that they're going to have Alzheimer's or a high likelihood of getting cancer or whatever other disease. So you could use genetics to look and determine whether or not, this is appropriate. As the Defender reported today, a 56-year-old woman in Virginia died January 30th hours after receiving her first dose of the Pfizer vaccines. Doctor told Dream Key's daughter that her mother died of flash pulmonary edema, likely caused by anaphylaxis. Okay, so you take that example and you go, "Oh my gosh, somebody died from the vaccine," and the fact checkers goes, "No, they didn't. They died from pulmonary edema caused by anaphylaxis." Okay. Isn't that, I mean, you know what I mean? We see how they just mince words here and then they just change thought processes and basically confuse the general public. The death is under investigation. As we go down through this article, other vaccine injury reports updated this week on the VAERS include 139 cases of facial asymmetry or Bell's palsy type symptoms and 13 miscarriages. Like, that is crazy. I mean, you have decisions to make here. If you're a pregnant woman, if you're a woman who's breastfeeding, if you're anybody, you have decisions to really make here and think about. The clinical trials suggest that almost all the benefits of the COVID vaccinations and the vast majority of injuries were associated with the second dose. Okay, that's also a pretty interesting thing to note there. As we go down the article, I want to point out a few more pieces in here. The CHD, Children's Health Defense, is calling for complete transparency. The Children's Health Organization is asking for Kessler and the federal government to release all data from the clinical trials and suspend COVID-19 vaccine use in any group not adequately represented in the clinical trials, including the elderly, frail, and anyone with comorbidities. The CHD is also asking for full transparency in post-marketing data that reports all health outcomes, including new diagnoses and autoimmune disorders, adverse events, and deaths from COVID vaccines. Okay, so basically, this article is pointing out too that there's a huge problem with the reporting. Okay, well, the VAERS database numbers are sobering. According to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services study, the actual number of adverse events is likely significantly higher. The VAERS is passive surveillance, and it relies on the willingness of individuals to submit reports voluntarily. And as a matter of fact, the CHD is asking for people, if you've had any type of adverse event with the vaccine, you can basically go and fill this out. Many physicians and doctors that I know of are actually asking people to go in and tell them and send them messages on social media if you had an adverse event as well, because what doctors are getting the feeling of, and people in general, that none of this stuff is being reported well, and there's a lot of things to worry about here. But of course, if we were to actually just look at, places like Facebook, they don't care about any of that information. They just want you to get the vaccine because they're going to change the world with it. So, make of this what you wish, but definitely some things to think about and some thought-provoking concepts here. So be sure to watch some other videos on the channel as I break down a lot of the news, and also subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up. Comment below, tell me what your thoughts are on this article, and share it with your friends to help me get this information out to the public